In The Year's Four Corners, the poet and novelist Lavinia Greenlaw travels to 4 places to witness the 2 solstices and 2 equinoxes of the British year. We begin on the 21st of December last year, the winter solstice, outside a prehistoric chamber in Orkney.
Arrived on the special day, you know that, do you? The shortest day of the year. But the sun's not due to start entering till about 2:30. Okay. Weather permitting.
Yeah, so that's the hillside.
It's a bit like Doctor Who's TARDIS. It looks like quite a small grassy mound from the outside, but once you crawl down that long passageway and you stand up inside it, it suddenly feels really like quite a big space.
Orkney resident writer Duncan MacLean and Alan Jones, a guide at Maeshowe, a 5,000-year-old Neolithic burial chamber here on mainland Orkney. I've come a long way to see it, and I'm surprised by how hard it is to spot. This is a northern midwinter day, never quite light, and the wind is so fierce that I can barely stand up straight, let alone open my eyes. But the closer I get, the larger it looms, now as a dome on a raised bank surrounded by a moat-like ditch. It has the makings of a fortress. Climbing up on top of the mound, 25 feet high, I suddenly feel how much bigger and higher, how much more important Maeshowe is compared to anything else around. From up here, I can see the edge of this island, which 5,000 years ago must have seemed like the edge of the world. The Neolithic builders of Maeshowe may not have had much sense of the world, but they could measure the path of the sun with incredible accuracy. For them, the year's turning points, its solstices and equinoxes, were not just interesting astronomical alignments. They marked the passage of the sun, a clock, calendar, and life source. All the rites and symbolism associated with the solstices and equinoxes boil down to the fact that the sun's presence and predictability was a matter of life and death. My year is punctuated in a casual, secular way by Christmas and New Year, Easter, summer holidays, and the back-to-school of September. Beneath these 4 moments lies the ancient and more logical, more scientific calendar of the shortest and longest days, as well as the 2 in which light and dark are equal. Over the next 4 days, I'll be marking the year's 4 corners, the solstices and equinoxes, from places in Britain where we can still feel and see the passage of light and the effects of the planetary lineup on the tides. I've come to Maeshowe because it was built precisely according to the passage of the sun. Today is the winter solstice, and as the sun sets, a beam of light should travel along its entrance passageway and into the chamber where it will strike the back wall, flooding the room with light. Apparently we've got a 50-50 chance of seeing this beam of sun enter the chamber at sunset today, the winter solstice. And I can see why they just can't tell, because the sun is going in and out from behind clouds constantly. When we get it, it has that intense, squeezed quality of stormlight, which electrifies the air and makes the atmosphere, well, what with the driving wind and the sporadic bursts of snow, it's a very physical atmosphere.
What you get here is wind, and you get darkness. This time of year, in the middle of December, just before Christmas, the sun's not coming up till certainly after 9 o'clock, and it could well be down about 2:30, certainly by 3. And on a cloudy, overcast day, it can be feel dark virtually the whole day long, really.
Okay, well that's the height of the passageway for about 4 meters. The lights are on inside. Keep your heads nice and low. Take your time. After you.
The tunnel into the chamber at Maeshowe is longer than I expected, perhaps because it's so low that I've had to double up and scuttle along it. It's rather like holding your breath. Arriving in the chamber, crouched down, face to the floor, makes its impact all the more remarkable. The first thing you do is look up, as if into the sky. It's about the size of a small living room and has 3 side chambers. Outside, above, below and around is earth, and the room does feel insulated, quiet and still. It's built of stone slabs so huge that it's hard to imagine them being moved at all. Some weigh as much as 30 tons.
Orkney is extremely fortunate, well that's how it seems to us now, fortunate in that there's very little woodland and really has not been any significant amount of wood for building with. So everything in Orkney has always been built of stone. You can see in the Stone Age villages that even the beds and the cupboards and so on are built of stone, and we're fortunate in that the stone here splits very easily into nice slim slabs, and so over thousands of years people have developed great skills in building dry stone dikes, stone houses, stone tombs.
Someone has estimated that it took about 100,000 man-hours to build Maeshowe. It's also a demonstration of extraordinary geometrical knowledge and technical skill. These massive stones hold each other in place and are so closely aligned that even if the chamber had not been covered with earth, I can easily imagine it surviving this long. But still no one's sure quite what it was for.
There are many theories, but let me just give you one. It's believed that they never brought bodies in here. They may have only just brought their bones, the remains. One theory is that they may have gathered them up over the 40 days, say, of the solstice period, and then each day maybe, when the sunlight penetrated, that was also when the ceremonies took place to bring their remains inside. It's also argued now that they made the height of that passageway purposely low, and the average height today may actually be not much different to 5,000 years ago, and they made it low to make you stoop and bow, as you've just done.
Somebody else has come up with a theory that made the chamber tombs, and come with a lot of other Stone Age monuments, were actually almost musical instruments. If you bang this stone, it gives a certain ringing note, and the shapes of them are designed to kind of amplify and echo different sounds. On the one hand, it makes you think, God, those Stone Age people were really clever. It looks beautiful. Also, it sounds beautiful. On the other hand, maybe it's a load of rubbish, and maybe it's just the fact that Maeshowe is kind of endlessly there for people to project their different wishes or imaginings onto. That's been going on for hundreds of years, thousands of years. The Vikings had their idea about what it was about. Before them, the Pictish people did, and since then, the people of the 17th and 18th century had their folk tales, and 21st century people have got their archaeological interpretations.
However much we know about the sun and when to expect it where, we can do nothing about the weather. The moment at which the beam of light should strike the back wall of the chamber at Maeshowe has been timed to the minute, but if a cloud gets in the way, it won't happen. As I'm beginning to realize this, I'm also becoming aware that I'll not be alone. The chamber is filling up with other solstice seekers, and we wait, as if in a stuck lift, for the cloud to move.
You know for sure that there were people watching that sun going across the same wall 5,000 years ago, but what were they thinking as they saw it inching across? Did it induce great feelings of optimism and hope for the year to come, or was it a light that kind of dwindled and then went out as the sun slipped past the point where it shines down the passageway?
What are we all here for? We line up on either side of the chamber, trying not to lose sight of the entrance while not getting in each other's way. The well-dressed Dutch tourists stand considerately at the back and get the poorest view. An American couple fail to persuade their children that there is a point to standing around in the cold being quiet. a bunch of young New Age traveller types roll in, having clearly come straight from the pub. A photographer arrives and sets his tripod up in the middle of the floor so no one can see anything. He's impervious to all the tutting, and so someone has to ask him straight out to move it. The guide checks the webcam and chats to a friend about his holiday, but the rest of us are tense, embarrassed, and already disappointed. The winter solstice is not an ending, but a beginning, the birth of new light, originally celebrated on December the 25th, a date later co-opted into the Christian calendar, as many pagan festivals were. The shift of balance back towards light is an assurance that there will be another spring. In pagan terms, it's a time of transformation and reincarnation.
My God, these people were clever. You know, you think of Stone Age people and probably you think of people in kind of furs and very rough bits of felted cloth wrapped about them, and they've just gone out and plucked a couple of fish out of the sea or killed a dog for supper or something like that, you know, and they throw it. But it's not like that until the cathedral came along in Kirkwall. Oh, you know, 3,000 or 4,000 years later, there'd been nothing of the sophistication of Maeshowe erected in Orkney, nothing near it. And really, apart from Maeshowe and the cathedral, is anything anywhere near as clever as that being put up in Orkney since then? Probably not. We've got a new sports centre, you know, but I don't think people are going to be marvelling at that in 5,000 years' time. It's the intricacy and the incredible intermingling of function and art that you see in Maeshowe, and the meaning of it is elusive because the language is lost. So we just have to look at the shapes and the forms and the rhythms of the stone and the darkness and light and the patterns of the stone and dream of our own meanings.
I kneel on the floor, getting stiff and cold, and gradually forget about these other people. We're all just waiting now. A diffident couple in their 50s move to the centre of the floor and rummage beneath their cagoules. I think they're going to bring out sandwiches and a flask, but the man produces a boron, crouches in front of the stone on the back wall, and begins to drum. As the light shifts and moves, briefly, faintly, it suddenly matters terribly that I see this happen. If the beam of light does not hit the chamber wall, the solstice has not passed, the year cannot move, time will stop. I also realize that rather than looking out towards the sun, I'm staring at the back wall, as if what matters is not the thing, but its image, what it means.
I'm afraid this is a no-show day.
I should have felt terribly disappointed, but when we all emerged from the chamber, the world had indeed been transformed. Blustery wind and sleet had become blizzard, and that night I waited at Orkney Airport as snow piled up against the windows and plane after plane was cancelled. This extreme combination of night and snow, light and dark, made sense of why people would go to such lengths to worship and in a way take control of the sun, to go underground and make it come to them. Out here, in the blackness and sudden wild weather, even a 21st century person feels the cold.
The Year's Four Corners was presented by Lavinia Greenlaw and featured Duncan MacLean and Andy Jones. It was produced in Bristol by Tim D.